All right, we are ready to go. So the very first thing I'd like to do is say, hey, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike Brooks, Mr. Inside Sales, and I am so happy that you're joining Stan Ballou, Mr. Fantastic, and myself for a phenomenal webinar today. A couple of things here. I want to make sure that everybody is ready to get the most out of today's program, so make sure you've got something to write with, because you're going to want to take notes. I was able to talk Stan into coming on and giving us 10 closing secrets guaranteed to double your income selling over the phone. And believe me, this is going to completely change the way that you sell over the phone. Let me give you a little introduction for those of you who don't know Stan Ballou. Stan has been called Mr. Fantastic. I think he's the most ripped off, respected, and referred to sales trainer alive. He has built a 30-year-plus reputation. He is, without a doubt, the preeminent expert in telemarketing sales training. He's been hailed for his motivation, mentoring, marketing, copywriting skills. And I'll tell you now, Stan's material, his training material, has taught more 6- and 7-figure-a-year income earning megabuck sales pros than any other trainer. And his power-packed audio and video programs have sold in 45 countries. I tell you now, Stan has been my personal mentor, and I can attest to being one of those 7-figure earners because of Stan Ballou. And you're seeing right there on the screen, AT&T likes to say that we think we invented telemarketing. Stan Ballou perfected it. Hey, real briefly, you know, at the age of 34, Stan was not all of these great things. In fact, Stan Ballou was a self-made failure. He was a high school dropout, divorced twice, and bankrupt, okay? He lived on macaroni and cheese for 3 straight months, drove a 15-year-old Volkswagen that he had to park on a hill to get it started. He constantly borrowed money from friends and relatives to pay the rent, and was blaming everybody and everything he could for his lack of success. He was ready to end it all. Kind of reminds me of my story when his higher power brought someone special into a life. Now, there's a saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I hope everybody on this phone is ready, because Stan was fortunate to have met a self-made multi-millionaire who agreed to be his personal mentor. And he gave Stan a very special gift. He believed in Stan before Stan believed in himself. And I'll tell you what, this turned Stan around. He developed an attitude and a mindset. He realized that knowledge is power. This guy challenged Stan to invest an hour a day in the next 5 years to become a world expert, and he did. Stan entered the selling profession, proceeded to double his income each year for 5 consecutive years. Think about that. He set sales records that still stand today. He semi-retired in 1983, started an Arabian horse farm on the tropical St. Johns River in Florida. He's written and produced his first audio series. He converted his 3-car garage into offices, and within a year he had 6 people on the phone selling $1 million a year of his training programs. I tell you what, I could go on and on about Stan. He is the real deal, and this is a real pleasure for everybody listening. So here's again what I want you to do. I want you to grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, get ready to get some information that's going to change your career. And by the way, at the end of this call, Stan is going to be answering your questions. So make a list of some questions. Start typing them in here as you think about them. We'll get to your questions at the end of this presentation. But as I say, Stan is the man. You're going to learn tons today. I've got my pen ready. Hey, without further ado, Stan, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Mike, it's a pleasure to join you again, and I appreciate the kind words about being your mentor. I also have to add that Mike has been a sponge through the years, and he's been by far the greatest student, if you ever will, of the sales process I've run into. He doesn't question it. If you tell him it's going to work, he gets on the phone and makes it work. And Mike, I'm just so thrilled that you've gone on to not only have an enormously successful career in sales, but now you're certainly recognized as one of the greatest sales trainers out there, and it's just a joy whenever I have the pleasure to work with you. For any of my listeners off of my list that may be exposed to Mike for the very first time, I have to stress to you, get Mike's material. Go to his website and get on his email list. It's just never-ending depth of this gentleman, and I have the highest respect for Mike. Well, folks, I want to add my welcome to this power-packed, fun-filled, content-rich seminar. As Mike said, take a lot of notes. We're going to be moving fairly quick through 10 secrets to dramatically increase your sales over the phone. Double, if not more so, your production, your sales, and hopefully your income. If you're
one thing, Stan.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Just speak up just a little bit.
All right. Can you hear me now? Okay.
I can. It says the audio isn't consistent, voice is a little weak, so just speak up as much as you can.
All right. Thank you, Mike. If you're in the great profession of sales, the odds are that you're either a professional closer or a professional visitor. Guess who makes the big bucks? When I first met my mentor back in 1977, he encouraged me to invest 1 hour a day, enter the sales profession, and he encouraged me to become a world expert within 5 years. When I said I was ready, he said he was going to test me to see if I was serious about starting to take charge of my life. Back in 1977, we didn't have CDs or even cassette tapes. So he handed me a record album, an old 33 1/3 record album by J. Douglas Edwards, who was considered to be the dean of American sales trainers at that time. It was called 13 Ways to Close a Sale. And he gave it to me on a Friday afternoon and told me to memorize all 13 closes over the weekend. He said that on Monday morning I would stand up in front of his sales force and rattle off all 13 closes if I was indeed serious. Well, needless to say, I stayed up most of that weekend listening to the record, writing down the closes, and then practicing, drilling, and rehearsing. And I passed the test on Monday, and that became my quest for knowledge in the sales industry. I'm proud to share that I just celebrated last month my 35th anniversary of investing that 1 hour a day to work on mastering my craft, and I'm constantly reminded that being successful in selling requires that we need to be better prepared than our prospect or customer. In other words, have more ways to get them to say yes than they have ways to say no. And today you'll learn 10 secrets of successfully closing sales over the phone. Any one of these 10 tips can increase your effectiveness by at least 50%. So I urge you to master at least 2 of them to double your sales, your production, and hopefully your income. So let's get started with tip number 1, wants are better than needs. In Selling 101, we were taught to always find the prospect's needs. And although there is some credence to that, we know from experience that people will buy what they want much more often than what they need. So we're going to talk about some types of prospects. I truly believe that by learning about the different types of personalities, you'll be able to determine their basic human wants and be able to sell to those wants instead of their needs. Here are some of the different personalities and how to better work with them. The first one is what we call a silent prospect. This prospect will listen to everything you say, but doesn't want to agree with you in fear of getting too involved and possibly being sold. So we encourage you to ask direct questions and force them to state their opinions. Don't rush your presentation, but rather be patient and encourage the prospect's involvement. The second type of prospect is the analytical prospect. This prospect likes to thoroughly analyze and ponder your presentation and normally ends up telling you that they want to think it over. Tell this type of prospect how your product or service has evolved. Review the research and explore the important areas and details. Be thoughtful and slow in your presentation to demonstrate that you are also analytical. The next one is the technical prospect. This prospect needs the details, the components, the exact procedures. Don't make any statements or claims unless you back it up with the nuts and bolts of how, why, when, where, and what. Next is the shopping prospect. This prospect will want to know the price right up front. Here's a danger. We have to sell value and delay the exact figures and final negotiations until the end of your presentation. If you haven't built enough value, they will stall by asking for further material, references, detailed proposals, etc. Next is the hostile prospect. This prospect makes it clear that they have been hurt, burned, stewed, screwed, barbecued, they complain, they disagree a lot, and in general, they let you know that they don't need you or want you. Now, here you need to stress benefits in your presentation and be positive, optimistic, and friendly. Also, make sure you allow them to dump their garbage before they'll be receptive to anything new. Absolutely, it's critical that you get them to tell you about the bad experience that they have suffered through before they're going to be receptive to anything new. Next is the know-it-all prospect. Oh, this prospect normally has a huge ego. They try to impress you and sometimes even intimidate you. Help this prospect feel that they're the teacher and you are the student. Show appreciation for their expertise and demonstrate the personal benefits that they will receive with your product or service. All right, continuing on, the next prospect is the closed-minded prospect. This prospect can be abrasive and skeptical of anything new or different. Please, I encourage you, get a commitment that they will at least listen and then demonstrate the fear or loss to them for not using your company or your product or your service. Next is a security-conscious prospect. This prospect will display a strong need for understanding or even friendship. Don't be overpowering or threatening with him or her. Relax and give a presentation that stresses the improvement of their personal, family, or job situation. Concentrate on facts and figures that offer reassurance of their well-being and their peace of mind. Next is the procrastinator prospect. This prospect usually sounds and acts disorganized. They tell you that they want what you have, but they need to wait until next week or next month or the next leap year. The prospect is simply avoiding the chance of failure. You need to stress the benefits to them, cite case histories, offer referrals or testimonials of satisfied clients, and also sell your credibility. End up by stressing the risk that they take by waiting. Next is the buck passer prospect. This prospect will tell you everything that you want to hear. The price seems right, and they understand the details, and they see the advantages of getting started. Well, folks, I hate to bust your bubble, but you may not have a decision maker, and no amount of skills will help you sell someone that doesn't have the authority to buy. Next is the doubting Thomas prospect. This prospect usually expresses doubt or disbelief about everything you say. Here you need to use references, referrals, overload them with success stories and overwhelming evidence. Next is and last is the image-conscious prospect. This prospect only thinks about what will look good for them and what other people will think of them. Show how the results of your product or service will be highly visible to everyone and will increase their prestige and image. So there's 10 or actually 12 different types of prospects. It's important that you appreciate the different types of personalities that you're dealing with, and don't be a one-trick pony, as I call it, where each presentation is exactly the same whether they like it or not. Try to explore the type of personality, and thereby it's much easier to find their wants rather than their needs. And of course, I'm going to encourage Mike to jump in at any time. All right, tip number 2, find the right buttons to push. Folks, I'm going to encourage you to quit asking questions and start using instructional statements. A great way to get them to open up and feel more comfortable speaking with us is to make our qualifying sound more conversational and less confrontational. Always remember, they don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. It's critically important to appreciate that there's three things that they care about most. I mentioned them earlier, and hopefully you caught them. Themselves, their job or career, or their family. Those three things are the most important things in anyone's life. It's critical that we get them to open up and talk about themselves in order to find their hot button or their buying motive. And that's how you find their wants and not necessarily their needs. Please appreciate that selling on the phone is becoming more and more a challenge. With B2C, business to consumer, about half of the U.S. population wants to be on the do not call list. And with B2B, business to business, many prospects love to hide behind their voicemail. Unfortunately, these statistics have been created because the majority of so-called salespeople do not show a sincere interest in their prospects, do not qualify properly, and jump right into talking about their product or service. So again, remember, they don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. All right, let's talk a little bit more about tip 2, and I mentioned it earlier. Start using instructional statements. Questions have a tendency to pry, probe, and irritate. If you need to find out 5, 10 different things, indeed it can end up sounding like an FBI interrogation. So it's critically important that we use instructional statements such as, tell me about whatever it is you need to know. Tell me a little bit about your family, or share with me the best investment you ever made, or fill me in on the most important single thing you're trying to accomplish over the next couple of years, or bring me up to date on why you were interested in this product. Folks, if you look at these are not questions. They're direct orders, if you will, but they will sound, again, much more conversational and less confrontational. Also, on tip number 2, use continuation phrases. Folks, please appreciate that many of the prospects that we talk to have been called by many other salespeople selling the same type of product or service, and most of these salespeople actually use the same basic questions. So over a period of time, many of our prospects, our clients, our customers, have actually come up with scripted answers to our scripted questions. And the greatest way to get them off of their script and find out what's real is use continuation phrases. We've all heard buyers are liars. Well, I hate to say it, but it's basically true, because they will tell us many times what they want to tell us and not the real them. So it's important that when they get done answering a question, a qualifying question, or responding to an instructional statement, rather than going on to your next question or the next subject that you need to find something out about, the moment they get done talking, use a continuation phrase like, go on, or tell me more, or, and then what happened? And please continue. Those are just 4. There's dozens of them in my material, but there's 4 to get you started. And whatever they say next to explain, justify, or enhance their original comment is normally more like the truth and nothing but the truth. All right, let's move on to tip number 3, how to know when to close. Well, I'm going to recommend something that most people don't do, and that is establish criteria for sale. Before we start our actual presentation, we might say something like this. Part of my responsibility is to make sure I answer all of your questions so you can make an informed decision. At the end of our call, if everything makes sense, I'll expect you to get started, and if it doesn't, you certainly have my permission to say no. Is that fair enough? Or you might say, during this call, I'm going to share all of the facts and figures you need to make a decision. And at the end, I expect you to tell me how I did by either taking advantage of our offer or passing on it. Does that make sense? Folks, you've now told them, and maybe more importantly, you've told yourself that you're going to be asking them for an order at the end of your presentation. You're going to be closing for a sale at the end of your presentation. You're not just there to visit or to educate or to touch bases or to anything else. You're there to make a presentation and ask them for a decision. Another great idea under how to know when to close is to rate their interest after each benefit. Folks, this is critical. If you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 benefits, the odds are they're not necessarily interested in all 6 benefits. They may only have an interest, a real interest, in 1 or 2 that are most important out of everything you can offer. So each time you stress a benefit, you can say something like, is that important to you? Or would that save you money? Or can you see the value of that? Or can you see why our customers love this? And if their response is strong enough, the odds are you may have just made a sale. Even if you don't make a sale, remember which benefit they rated the highest. So when you're overcoming objections and building more value at the end, you can go back and hit on those key benefits that they rated the very highest. Hopefully this is making sense to you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, you know what? I just want to chime in here. I remember when I learned that from you, Stan, at the very beginning, rate their interest after each benefit. Let me just tell everybody out there who is listening to underline that, because that one technique alone allowed me to cut my pitching time in half, because before I learned that, I was under the impression that I needed to trudge through my whole presentation, go through the whole script, get to the very bottom, and then start asking for the deal. Well, let me tell you, that was a laborious process, took me a long time, and then sometimes I get to the end, and they would not be anywhere near being close to being a deal. As soon as I implemented this, and by the way, when you sell on the phone, it's so important to take people's pulse. I was able to say, hey, how does that sound to you so far? Is that what you're looking for? Do you think that would work in this application? And if I got 2 or 3 buy-ins, real positive buy-ins, guess what? I stopped pitching and got the deal. Hey, sounds like we're a great fit. Here's what I recommend you do. And again, just like Stan said, I suddenly was closing more deals, closing them faster, not talking past the close, and making a lot more money. That's a great point. Keep going, Stan. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, I know. You just hit the nail on the head. You're going to be able to make more presentations in less time and close more deals, not talking past the point of the close or the sale. I mean, again, any one of these is good for at least a 50% increase and possibly even doubling your production.
Amen.
If you have diarrhea of the mouth, as I call it, and you just get on the phone and want to tell everyone everything they ever wanted to know about your product or service, holy smokes, it's a time waster. So, again, rating their interest. And again, over the phone, that's a challenge, and that's why you have to invite their comment. Face-to-face, you could see their expressions. You can watch color changes in their cheek, their body language. You can watch dilation of their pupils if you're close enough. But on the phone, we have none of that going for us, and that's why it's so critically important to tweak what you already know about selling and tailor making it over the phone. All right, let's move on to tip number 4, how to close without pressure. Many sales reps are afraid to ask for the order because of the fear of rejection. Or, as Mike loves to say, and I agree completely, they simply aren't properly prepared with scripted responses to the standard objections. In addition, many sales reps mistakenly believe that closing is high pressure. Well, folks, the best definition of high pressure I've ever heard is that it's trying to sell someone something that will do them absolutely no good. That's high pressure. One way to close without pressure is to use trial closes. Trial closes are great, folks, because they only ask for an opinion, not a decision. However, if they give you a strong enough response, you've just made your sale. Again, using 3 of the 5 senses, you could say, how does this look so far? Compared to what else you were looking at, how does this sound? Or how does this feel? Folks, if they give you a strong enough response, wow, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Duh, what do you do next? Great, here's how we get started. As long as you've completed the legalities and you've done your disclaimers or whatever, requirements are legally, that have to be done, you can go right to wrapping it up. How does this feel? Feels great. Great, here's how we get started. Oh, folks, learn to listen carefully. Most of us don't really listen to our prospects or clients because we're too busy thinking about what we're going to say next. If we get their feedback and listen closely, many times you can close without pressure. All right, let's move on to tip number 5, 2 critical times you must close. Folks, there's 2 critical times we absolutely must close. Immediately after answering a question and immediately after handling an objection. Folks, if you only answer their question or only handle their objection and shut up, whose turn to talk is it? Theirs. And they're going to give you another question or another objection. And it becomes a game like, can you answer more questions than they can ask, or can you handle more objections than they can give you? So after answering a question or handling an objection, you might say something like, have we cleared that up? Now, if they say, no, not really, well, then they need more. But if they say, yeah, I sure did. Yeah, now I understand. Well, if it's a strong enough response, hello, and great, here's how we get started. You go right into your close. Or you might say, does that clarify the issue? Or do you feel more comfortable now? Folks, any one of those, and I've got dozens of them in my material. I'm just giving you 2, 3, or 4 to get you started in the right direction. Learn to confirm your answer to any question or any objection. All right, folks, and your endorsement. All right, number 6, learn how to close after the close. What do we mean here? Well, how about trying for an add-on or an upsell? Please appreciate that when someone buys from you, somewhere between 20 and 60% of them, depending on your product or service, will buy something else on this same call. Think about it. You've developed rapport. You've answered their question. They feel comfortable with you. You've handled their objection. You've built value. They've reached into their pocket. They've got in their wallet. They've whipped out their plastic or their purchase order number. They've just bought something. They're in a buying mood, folks. Don't say, okay, that's my limit. That's all you can buy on this call. Please understand they're in a buying mode. So try to add on or upsell, possibly a larger order to help them save some money. Again, if you're a rep, get with management after this and say, what can we add on or upsell? If your management, take a long, hard look at, what you're doing after somebody says, yes, I'll take that. Are you trying for an add-on or upsell? If not, you're leaving somewhere between 20 and 60% additional business on the table. You might also try for a cross-sell.
Hang on, Stan. Let me just tag on. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that try for an add-on or an upsell. Let me just tell everybody, every sales rep who is listening right now, I know many of you felt the same way I felt when I first heard this advice. And what I felt when I got a deal, I was just grateful to get an order, and I didn't want to tempt fate and ask for more. I was almost afraid that if I tried an upsell, they'd say, hey, I don't want to buy anything. I'm going to withdraw that first order. So I was afraid at first to use the upsell. And I tell you, once I learned this technique from Stan, and he's right, whatever he said, I did because it just made me more money. Once I broke through that fear, had my upsells scripted out, and I even had drop sell upsells after a while, I was able to double, in some cases, my original sale by just asking for more on that same sale. It's one of the secrets to how I doubled my income is I already had a buyer on the phone. I just sold them more. And believe me, they are in a buying mode. Stan, that one tip alone is worth $125,000 of additional income in a year.
Exactly. And it's so simple, too. If they say, yeah, I'll take it, go ahead and sign me up, great. By the way, my manager just told us this morning if you want to increase your order size by just 20%, we can save you another 30% on your order. How's that sound? Well, again, if you're giving them more value, you'd actually be doing them a disservice by keeping it a secret. And the same thing with a cross-sell. Folks, you know, look on the internet. Go to Amazon or something like that. You'll see it all over the place. People that bought this or checked this out also liked, and it gives you all the additional books or music CDs or whatever it may be. Again, if they're in a buying mode, try to cross-sell them additional products, ancillary products, possibly accessories or complementary products or services, maybe a warranty, whatever. You know, again, 20 to 60% of them will buy more while they're still on this call. All right, let's move on to tip number 7. Close 20% of the ones you miss. Now, folks, simply do the math on this, and you'll realize that this is good for 20% more business, and it could very well be 50 to 100% more income. What I'm going to encourage you to do with management permission, if it's legal, is record your sales calls. Record them, and then immediately critique them, analyze them, find out what you did wrong, and then call them back and do it right. Even if you can't record them, at least you could call them back, and guess who knows why they didn't buy? They do. So all you need to do is ask them why they didn't buy. I'm just curious, just to, you know, help me with my future customers. I'm curious, what's the single biggest reason we didn't do business together today? Let them tell you. And then you correct it, and you go back and you make many more sales. All right, tip number 8, use a benefit summary. Folks, this is one of the most critical factors as far as making a presentation, and so many salespeople don't use it. Let's say you've been on the phone for 10, 20, 30 minutes or even longer, covering all the features, the benefits, answering questions, handling objections. Now you're asking for the order, you're trying to close, and you expect your prospect or client to make a decision. Folks, they're faced with an abundance of information to sort through. It's like they're overwhelmed with all of the information, and it can be overwhelming to them. The top pros always use a benefit summary to wrap up their presentation and make it as easy as possible for the prospect or client to make a positive decision. What you simply do is summarize with 3 to 5 benefits, something like, here are the 4 critical factors you need to base your decision on. And then you go through the benefits, and then you ask for the order. Any other questions before we complete your paperwork? Folks, use a benefit summary. This one alone will just double, if not triple, your production overnight. Next point, number 9, know at least 10 ways to close. Folks, I'm going to suggest to you that the average sale is made after 3 to 5 attempts. The average salesperson, unfortunately, only knows 3 ways to close. So you're already behind the 8 ball. And unfortunately, most salespeople start out with their power close. Well, what do you think? And if anything, the answer to that stupid question is normally, well, I think I want to think about it. Folks, you just fed the word think to them. I'm going to encourage you to know at least 5 ways to close, if not 10 or 20 or 30. There's 100 of them on my audio series. They're all transcribed in the sales expose. There's no excuse for you not to become a master of your craft. If you're going to sit there every day on the phone talking to sick and demented people, then why not make as much money as you possibly can by knowing at least 10 ways to close? Again, simply have more ways to get them to say yes than they have ways to say no. I'm going to go to tip number 10 and give you the 5 most successful closes of all time. I call them the 5 most successful closes in history. Again, depending on your product or service, all 5 possibly don't fit. Maybe you have to get into my audio series or the sales expose and pick out 1 or 2 replacements. But if you become a master at these 5 and then add 5 more, you will be a megabuck income producing sales pro. All right, the first one is tell them what to do close. Folks, please appreciate that about 95% of the population are what we call followers. 5% are leaders. The followers need to be told what to do. After your presentation, you simply use directional statements such as, here's what we do next, or here's how we get started, or here's the next step we need to take. And you tell them what to do. Unless they stop you, folks, you now have a sale. Number two, yeah, it's an oldie but a goodie, the order blank close. After your presentation, you simply start asking questions to complete your order, such as their shipping address. I need to verify your shipping address, the correct spelling of their name, how they want the account to, what name or names they want the account under, what piece of plastic they prefer to use. Folks, these are all questions that would go into your order, and unless they stop you, you have just made a sale. Number three is what happens close. Tell them what happens close. Folks, I've only had 3 original thoughts since July of '77, and I'm not sure about 1 or 2 of them, but this one I believe I actually created. When I first got into sales, and I was monitoring and listening to other salespeople, I noticed that when salespeople asked if their prospect was ready to open their account, or if they were ready to go ahead, or if they were ready to get started, there was always some uncomfortable hesitation. And it occurred to me that since some prospects really don't know what would happen next if they say okay, and since we all have a fear of the unknown, they would normally hesitate. Well, I created this close to take away that uncertainty. And of course, you need to change a few words to fit your product or service or your situation. However, as an example, this is the way it might go for commodities. At the end of my presentation, and I feel they're ready, I've created value, I might say something like, Mr. Prospect, at this point, if you were to tell me that you wanted to open your account, here's what happens. I put you on hold for a few seconds and hook up a 3-way with our trading desk. They will explain that the transaction will be recorded for your protection, so you know exactly what quantity you're investing in and at what price. Once they're done, I'll stay on the line with you so we can wrap up a few final details. Please hold while I conference this in. And unless they stop you, you've just made a sale. And one of the things I hope you're noticing is my delivery. I'm not yelling, I'm not screaming, I'm not, overpowering them. If anything, I'm offering them a solid, competent, professional, good tone, very reassuring, no pressure at all. It's just, again, the best definition I've ever heard of a close. It's a logical conclusion to an effective sales presentation. All right, number 4, the no high pressure close. Folks, this is absolutely killer if you do it with enough sincerity. After your presentation, you might say something like, since I hate high pressure salespeople and no one likes to be sold, I'm not even going to ask you to buy. Instead, let's just complete the paperwork so we can get your account open. And unless they stop you, you've just made a sale. Last but not least is the sell yourself close. This could be an absolute incredible increase in production for you. Since Selling 101, we were taught that the prospect buys us. We've all heard that. And whatever we represent goes with the sale. And although I believe most salespeople buy into that, I rarely ever hear anyone doing it. As you wrap up your presentation, you might try something like this. And last but not least is the biggest benefit I can offer that you can't get from any other company in the world. And that, of course, is me. I believe in a 100% commitment to my customers, which means I'll be available if you have any questions. Plus, from time to time, I'll be sharing some great money-making and money-saving ideas with you, which I picked up from working with my other customers. If I'm reading you right, and I believe I am, that's the type of professional service that you not only demand, but you also deserve. Am I right? And unless they disagree with you, you've just made a sale. All right, well, folks, before we take some questions from our listeners, I should mention that there are 95 additional closes on my audio series. In addition, all of the wording I used today, plus all 100 closes, are transcribed in the sales expose. So I'm going to encourage you, please, if you do nothing else, visit my website, www.stanballou.com, and you can subscribe to our free monthly newsletter, no cost. You can subscribe you'll also receive a free weekly marketing tip. And you'll also, there's a ton of free